Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm coming on to share with you a tutorial on how I make my quilt as you go. This is what I'm calling the brickwork pattern because it does look like brickwork, and this is what I'll be showing you. I hope it's in frame. I've got the camera quite high at the moment, but I will be lowering it down so you can see. Now this is all hand sewn, and like I said, it's quilt as you go, so just as you're assembling it, that's the whole quilt top made. Well, made in the process of being made. You can machine stitch these, but I prefer the look of hand quilting, and it'll be using the applique stitch and also just a running stitch to add a little bit of quilting. So here they are again. So with this, I'm using a Moda Grunge print on the back that is in colourway Sugar Cookie, and then I'm using some Tilda Fat Quarters and some scraps. And so the measurements for these is 5 inches by 2.5, but that is the measurement of the inside fabric. So we'll discuss that when we talk about the templates. So the templates that I've been using are by Daisy and Grace. I purchased these from the Festival of Quilts. So this is how she sizes them. So the 5.5 by 2.5 I believe is actually the inside fabric. So it ends up just slightly larger. And I bought the 2.5 inch square to go with it. And this is how the templates come. So you have an outer piece and an inner piece. So what you'll need to do when they first arrive is to, well, whenever you start the project, not just when they arrive, you use this outer piece to cut the cream or whatever colour you want as the backing. You can do the backing scrappy as well if you wanted to. And then this is for cutting the wadding and for cutting the inside of the fabric. So what I've done is I have just cut a whole bunch out so that they're ready to go. If you're doing the same pattern as me, you don't need as many as of the squares because they just go on the ends. And then I've just got a whole bunch cut out, and as you can see the backgrounds are bigger, and that will become clear why. And then I just cut some wadding. So this is just 80-20 wadding, so cotton and polyester wadding, but I like a wadding that's quite thin, and because you have to fold over the background fabric, you want it to be easy enough to do that. So I find that this wadding, is just right. You'll also need some of your basic haberdashery, so threads. This is the thread that I'm going to use to demonstrate today. I hope that's in focus, I don't think it is. I'll sort that out. This is the thread that I'm going to use today, but usually I use a very fine polyester thread. And let me show you closer. You can barely see the applique stitches. The stitches that you can see there around the edge are just my quilting stitches that I've added, and I just wanted on the back for it to just look like an impression of the quilting. Here I did 2 rows, but I've scrapped that now. I don't want to pull it back, but I'm just going to leave it there, and then the rest I've just added one row of quilting. And like I say, you can barely see that applique stitch. Right then, so the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to get the backing fabric. Now this is quite hard to see, the right side and the wrong side, but you put the right side down to the table. You take the outside piece and you line that up just perfect over the top. So we've lined that up, and then you get your wadding and you slot that into the middle, and that will fit perfectly if you've used this to cut it out. Your centre fabric, and again just pop those over the top, And then I like to use pins. You definitely need a pin for the middle. So you put a pin through, try not to lift it up at this point because you don't want to adjust or make anything slip. So once you've got that pinned, you can lift this away and you no longer need it at this stage. So essentially what we're going to do now is create a binding. So you fold that up, you can finger press it, but I like to use one of these seam rollers, and this is just a cheap one. So it does help if you've got a hard surface beneath. And then you just fold it again. If you notice, let me get you in a bit closer, I'm not all the way up to the fabric. I like to leave a little hairline because otherwise it creates a bit too much bulk and you end up puckering this fabric. And then you're just going to fold it up again. And there you have it. You could use these clips, but I find that even just the smallest movement with the clips and it can knock the fabric. So I like to use a pin. And what I do is you can lift it at this stage if you're confident of keeping it right. And I just put the pin through the very edge, down to the back, a touch, and then up through all the layers. And as you can see, I've caught the back. So what you do is when you've done that side, you move to the direct opposite. You don't go round in a clockwise motion, you go to the direct opposite. So we'll do that again, fold it there. Again, just a hairline. So you can see if you had thick wadding, it would be hard to fold this over. So try and get a thinner wadding if you can. Get a pin. For some reason I can only pin from the top. There we go. Now when you get to here, just give these a little press. And fold it up again. Now I like to pin on these directly into the corners. So when I'm folding the corners, I'm not necessarily looking here to get it lined up. I'm looking here at this inside edge. Is that a nice 90-degree angle on the inside edge? We'll come back to the outside edge in a moment. So I don't pin in the middle here, I pin on the outside because you want to hold that corner. So go down again and back up. And then move on to this corner. There we go. So again, it's just caught them. There will be a lot of pins, but you generally don't catch your fingers on them or anything. What I will say is about this middle piece, if you want to add another one to start with, add it, and once you get more confident, you might not need it, especially on the smaller square. On the rectangle on the long sides, I do add one in the middle. And then we'll just repeat. So it won't be flat here because we've pinned it and that's making a little bit of movement. So don't worry too much about it not being 100% flat at this stage. And I've just realised I haven't even filed my nails to shape them. They're all misshapen and broken, so I do apologise about the close-up on my nails. I do a manual job, so it does take a toll on my nails. Okay, so you might be looking at these corners thinking that's a mess. You know, there's all these dog ears hanging out. But let me just show you one that I've sewn, and we'll cover it as we go in through the tutorial. So when we sew it, we're going to tidy the edge up. It's dropping out of focus when I show you the edge. See, there we go. The edges are all tidy. And don't worry, this one comes down a touch here. I don't know if you can see that. See, it comes down a touch, it's not quite level. I'm sorry about the focus, but what happens when you sew it all together, you're not going to see any of those, because the way that we stitch it together, you sort of miss it all. Okay, so we'll discuss that at the end as well when we're sewing them together. So now we've just got a needle threaded with a knot at the other end. The needles that I'm using are just these long needles, can't remember what they're called, milliner needles I think, so I quite like those. Right, so we're going to begin stitching now. We'll choose an edge that hasn't got a pin on it, and what we do is we start a little bit way back and we come up right on the edge. Now we start in here so that we can bury the knot. So push that all the way up and then give it a pull. Sometimes I find it helps if you actually separate that top, it just helps the knot go in. Cut that really close and give it another tug and the tail will disappear. And that is where you're constructing your stitches. That's how close we are to the edge. So bear in mind, if you're using matching fabric, you're barely going to see those. So the applique stitch, you go down, you sort of putting your needle at this angle, not this angle. Be careful because your thread will get wrapped around everything, and you're coming up like that. And you go over. And you just pull it taut, not overly tight but just enough. As you're going round you can take the pins out, so don't worry about those. Okay, so as you come into the corner, let me just check it's in focus, yeah. What I do is I go right along here and I actually go in so I'm catching all of the layers there. So can you see that I've probably punctured this edge and this one. That's going to hold it in. If you use clips, you don't have this problem as much, but I find that the fabric can sometimes slip. So you can give everything a little tug. Don't take the pin out just yet, just go a little bit further, go one more in perhaps, just so you know that the corner is secured. Right, so what we're going to do now is hold it right here. So you've got a grip on the corner, take that out, and we're going to carry on along the edge. I usually only manage to do one or two more on the corner at this point. Yeah, and then here, come right out on the corner, as close to the corner as you can to secure the corner right in the corner. Put the corner in the corner. Now switch your work to holding it like this. And then here, as I said, you've got that little dog ear, but what you do is just push it in with your needle, fold it under like that and hold it closed. Go down here, right on the edge, and I just do a little bit of a whip stitch here just to hold it all in, just catching everything. There we go. And then at this point pull it tight on this with this thread, and I don't go right into the corner because now I need to get my thread back to here. So what you need to do is push your needle into the top. See where I've got it there? And you're going to travel in between all the layers and come out in the corner. Pull that down. Try not to pull it too tight, otherwise you'll warp the corner. And then just carry on all the way along. Now when you're actually pushing your needle in, you're going through the top material and the wadding, but you're not going through on the back. I think I have a tiny bit there, so I'll just do that again. So at this point, none of your stitches are going through the back, have I? But you are catching the wadding. So I spoke to the lady at Daisy and Grace, and she has said you don't have to quilt these as long as you're catching the wadding. But I like to quilt them, it just feels a little bit more durable on the fabric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on with this, and then I'll show you how I quilt these. So I've completed that. I didn't quite have enough thread to actually make it all the way around, but you get the general idea. So what I'm going to do now is just show you how to knot once you've finished doing this stitch. So you do need a little bit of thread to actually complete it, and we're going to bury the thread again. So I just tie it in a conventional knot. I make a circle and pass the thread through the circle. I don't pull it all the way tight, I leave it a couple of mil away from the stitch. As you can see there, it's not right close. And I actually do 2 knots just to secure it. If anyone knows of a better way to do the knots, do just let me know, and anyone else doing the tutorial can also read it in the comments. And then you just put the needle right down where you would have made the stitch and come out sort of 1/2 inch away from the edge like we did when we started it, and just give a firm tug and that knot should bury itself in. Once it's you'll hear it pop. Once it's popped, I just pull it a little bit more and I trim away the edge, and the thread will also disappear and you can't see anything on the back. Just be careful when you're pulling anything tight around the corners. Try not to pull in the corners, otherwise they will warp a little bit. So we'll start with the quilting now. So again, a knotted needle and thread. I do usually use a thimble when I'm doing my quilting, but I can't actually find my thimble at the moment. So we're going to do the same thing again. We'll bury the knot. So we start about 1 inch, 1/2 inch away, and I like to start sort away from the corners, so in the middle of one of the sides I like to start the quilting. And at this point we're what we would call quilting in the ditch, so we're coming up right on the edge as close as you can without actually being on the binding. Again, we're going to do the same thing, just pull the knot through. I pull the top fabric up, it just makes it a little bit easier, but I do struggle with these sometimes, as you can see. And just trim it all off, and that will just magically disappear when you tug it through. Now, hand quilting is really simple. You can do your stitches as small or as big as you want. It's all personal choice, and you don't really see the hand quilting stitches that much, so don't worry if it's not something that you're proficient in. Neither am I really. And I'll just load several stitches up on the needle. That's why it's good to have these longer needles. I think that was 3 stitches. And I just pull the thread through. I don't pull it tight, I just pull it so it's all neat in there, because you don't want it to pucker up. And then we just go around the corner and we just repeat the same process. Just put in 2 or 3 stitches. You can just do 1 stitch if you are new to hand quilting. That's absolutely fine. And there you can see how the stitches are on the back. You wouldn't see that if I used the thread that I would normally use. You know, it's very neutral and it just leaves sort of almost like an impression of the quilt in there. My stitches are smaller on the back, and that just gives a really nice finish. And as you can see here on the larger quilt, you can't see any of the hand quilting from the front, it's all just visible on the back. So I really like using the thinner threads. I like polyester over cotton threads, and I use the same thread for applique, for joining them, and for doing the quilting. And I'm just going to show you now how to join two squares. We line them up so the corners are exactly meeting. You might find that some squares are slightly different sizes to each other. Sometimes they don't fit as accurate, but just do your best and place a piece that fits better, and just have a play around with what pieces actually fit better than others. What we're going to do is bring our thread up right in the corner, again just burying that knot in there. And I just do a whip stitch over these corners, so that's simply just going from one side to another. So we'll do that right on the corner so that I can make sure that it's secure. And what we want to do is we want to catch both layers of that folded piece, because that will really help to neaten it up. As I was saying earlier, you want this join to be neat, so you want to catch the back and that middle piece in a sense. So I just whip stitch back and forth over this section. Again, don't worry that here my stitches look very visible. It won't do when you're using matching thread. And just give everything a tighten as you're actually going along. Just pull it all nice and tight. We're just going to do a whip stitch over these first few, and make sure you're catching all the layers as we go. And we only need to, as if you do English paper piecing, just a small nibble on each side. I'm not going very deep with my stitches, and that helps it remain invisible from the front as well. And just give it a pull. Now from here on we're going to do a stitch that the owner of Daisy and Grace teaches on her videos, and it's kind of like a modified ladder stitch. So you do a ladder stitch on the top, you go in, you move down a little bit, but then you just take a little nibble of the bottom as if you're doing a whip stitch, pull that over, and you actually go back in the top of the previous stitch and then move over a little bit like you was doing a ladder. And just repeat that, so just a little nibble on the bottom and go in as if you're doing a ladder stitch. And I sort of do these maybe 1/8 of an inch apart. The closer you can get these stitches, the stronger your seams will be, and there'll be less gaping in the seams. And then I just pull everything taut every few stitches. But this is the perils of using cotton thread that I have done for this demo. It's actually split and broken the thread, so that's why I don't recommend using cheaper thread. But you can see how small those stitches have gone there. Those first two, they've really gone small, so if I was able to keep the tension and pull the rest tight, the rest would go just as small as that. So we're just going back over, just taking a small bite of the fabric. Now the thread is just a little bit messed up at this point because of the fact that it's broken. So I'll just show you how that looks from the inside, and as you can see, you can barely see any of those joining stitches, but that joint will be nice and strong and it will hold everything for you. And look how it's neatened up the corner as well. So yes, like I was saying, polyester thread, I just use a polyester thread that I have for my business, so use whatever thread you have that you think is suitable. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to show me your creations over on Instagram. I would be really keen to see those, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and leave me a comment letting me know what you think. Take care, bye bye.